Shalom, shalom, everybody. Welcome back to Reading with Shilo. It's Shilo, man. We're here to get in the next chapter. And so far, man, the chapter's been pretty good. There's been some informative chapters on marriage and what a helpmeet really is. And I think a lot of people should look at that. Look at that, examine yourself, and see if that's something you really want to be. And if it's something you really want to be, do you have the qualifications? And do you understand your job title? Do you understand your job? All those different things. But that goes for both sides. But we talking about the women now. Chapter 9 is finding your life in his. Finding your life in his. Man, what a big question. Can you find your life in your husband's? Ooh. So many women want their own life. But let's read it. Created to be his helpmeet by Debi Pearl, chapter 9. Chapter 9. Finding your life in his. From the beginning, God meant for us to be a comfort, a blessing, a reward, a friend, an encouragement, and a right-hand woman. Memories that matter. I watched a movie one time called Dad. It told the story of an old couple in their final years. The wife treated her husband as inept, controlling him and always jumping to supply his every need with a patronizing air. She wouldn't even let him pour the milk on his cereal. He seemed to be senile, living in a hazy world. The grown son came home to help the old parents in their last days. The old lady had spent her life controlling and taking care of her Mr. Nice, steady husband. But while the old woman was in the hospital with an ailment, the old man, at the encouragement of the middle-aged son, started going places and doing fun things. Suddenly, grandfather seemed years younger. It was like the calendar was turned back 50 years. He was happy now. When grandmother got out of the hospital, she came home to a changed man. With great enthusiasm, he talked of friends and family that actually never existed. He spoke of the dairy farm and their life on it. He spoke of their 4 children, but they only had 2. He spoke with longing of his much loved, gentle, and obedient wife, quiet, different from the reality he'd experienced over their many years together. His wife was terribly shaken because she knew that there never had been a dairy farm, nor were there more than 2 children. So she, the woman, had remembered so finely was not her. A psychologist was called in to try to explain what was happening to the old man's mind. The doctor explained to the family that for 50 years, grandfather had worked faithfully in the same factory, doing the same old job with his hands. But while his hands worked, his mind was dreaming of the life he really wanted. It was a life of sunshine and hard work on a dairy farm with his large family of children helping him. As grandfather's mind aged, the pleasant make-believe world he had lived in his imagination became more real to him than the caged life he had actually lived. Because of his wife's controlling hand and his desire to do his duty and please her, he had failed to live his dreams. She had weakened him with her control and criticism until he created an imaginary world of hope and fulfillment. This simple story illustrated shows so well the sad reality of many families. The CPA. This letter came from a lady whose husband decided to make his dreams come true. It would have taken a book the size of this one to explain to her why she needs to be her husband's dream lady. I know this is what she really wants. She has just temporarily lost her vision. Dear Mrs. Pearls, or Dear Pearls, I have been married for 19 years, and my husband really is a great man. He knows the Lord, but has not been as consistent with his Bible reading as I'd like to see. I'm not saying anything to him about it yet. Our problems really stem from the change he made for our family that started about 3 years ago. When we married, he was studying to be a CPA. I helped him through the last years of schooling and spent 15 years with him going through long hours of tax seasons. I didn't like it much, but I knew that it was his career. I wanted to find some job that would let him stay at home and be his own boss. I thought that it was a noble cause, and I wanted him to be with his sons as they grew up. Well, what he has decided to do now, I can hardly handle it. He decided to become a dairy farmer. We are city people. I told him all along I really didn't have a desire to be a dairy farmer. For 3 years, all he has done is read and research on it. I know he can make it work. It is just not something I want to do. I have had to cope with a lot, and he still works in town and rushes home to go to work on the barn. I had to wait dinner on him last night until 7 p.m. And then he rushes home and goes straight to the barn. I was really hurt. I'm tired of working and feeling as though we are getting nowhere. This is tearing the family apart. I know I must be submissive, but I truly do not want to do this. I know that I need to be submissive. I know I must be submissive, but I truly don't want to do this. It is not my dream. There was no talk on farming 19 years ago. Yolanda. Woo! Things change. You gotta go where the leader gonna go. You gotta go where the leader gonna go. Yolanda's concept of marriage is all wrong. Not at all like God's intention for marriage. God didn't create Adam and Eve at the same time and then tell them to work out some compromise on how they would each achieve their personal goals in a cooperative endeavor. He created Adam, gave him an occupation, appointed him as ruler of the planet, endowed him with a spiritual outlook, gave him commands, and specified his occupational duties. Adam commenced his rule of the planet. Before God created Eve to help him in his life goals, Adam did not need to get Eve's consent. God gave her to Adam to be his helper, not his partner. God gave her to Adam to be his helper and not his partner. She was designed to serve. No, sir. Not to be served, to assist, not to veto his decision. I know a lot of sisters don't like that thought. Adam didn't need to get Eve's consent. God gave her to Adam to be his helper, not his partner. She was designed to serve, not to be served, to assist, not to veto his decisions. Talk about a change of occupation and habitation. Look at Eve. Can you imagine her saying something like this to Adam? When God brought me to you in that wonderful garden and we commenced life together, you never said anything about thorns and thistles, about pain and childbirth, about milking goats and churning butter. I'm not a wilderness girl. I wonder if Yolanda's husband will quit his dream come true. Will quit his dream come true because she drops frequent reminders that 19 years ago he didn't tell her that someday he was going to be a dairy farmer. Will her unhappy, overworked expression break his joy and rob him of his vision, which can be easily done? Will her unhappy, overworked expressions break his joy and rob him of his vision? If he does not go back to being a full-time CPA, I wonder if he will spend the rest of his life dreaming of a different kind of lady for a wife, a bunch of happy children, and a barn full of milk cows. Life is now. Don't make him ruin his life for being forced to count someone else's money. Find find your life in his. God made us women to be helpmeets, and it is in our physical nature to do so. It is our spiritual calling and God's perfect will for us. It is the role in which we will succeed in life. And it is where we will find our very greatest fulfillment as a woman and as a saint of God. God said in Genesis, I will make him a helpmeet for him. Paul said, for the man is not of the woman, but the woman of the man. Say it again, sir. Not right now. Wait. Paul said, for the man is not of the woman, but the woman of the man. Neither was the man created for the woman, but the woman for the man. 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 8 through 9. Say it again, sir. Say it again, sir. No, sir. Not right now, sir. Not right now, sir. Not right now, sir. Not right now, sir. I'm reading. After I finish reading about what God said the married woman is supposed to be, did you know that Paul said, for the man is not of the woman, but the woman of the man? 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 8 through 9. Unto the woman he said, and thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. Rule. They don't like that word either. He shall rule. Genesis chapter 3, verse 16. If he's your king, what does a king do? A king rules over his kingdom. When we fight God's will and our husband's dreams, we are frustrated and disappointed. If our husbands are kind, steady men, like Yolanda's husband, they will eventually become discouraged and give up trying to please us. If our husbands are command men, they may leave us behind and find a dairy-loving woman. If our husbands are visionaries, they will yell and make our lives miserable until we run back to mama and end up sleeping in a cold bed and living on food stamps. Life is full of choices. How you choose to respond will help decide your fate in life. Life is now. Learn to really enjoy taking out the trash and milking the cow. You will be amazed at how God will fill you full of himself. You will look back in your happy old age and rejoice at your lot in life and wonder how you could have ever been a long-faced sad sack. Someday, people will say to you, your personality is just a happy type, and that is why you enjoy life. Isn't that right? You can laugh and know that being in God's will is the only thing that makes you full of joy. God is not looking for a happy woman or for happy women to make them into helpmeets for good men. He is looking for women willing to be true helpmeets to the men who they marry, so they can fill them full of joy. Oh man, let me do it. God is not looking for happy women to make them into helpmeets for good men. He is looking for women willing to be true helpmeets to men who they married, so he can fill them full of joy. Shalom, shalom. Thank you for stepping in. We're in chapter 9. We're almost done with chapter 9. I might read 10 too. I might read 9 and 10. Yeah, I'll read 9 and 10 today. I'm going to go back and change that. 9 and 10 of Created to Be His Helpmeet by Debi Pearl. Mm-hmm. His express image. We have studied 3 different types of men and how each one relates to the lady in his life. We have learned that God gives wisdom to those who ask. By now, you know that it will take supernatural wisdom for you to come to know, accept, and appreciate your man as God made him. He may be all 3 different expressions at different times in his life, or he may be some of one and a lot of another. The important thing is for you to understand that he is what God made him and that you are to be his suitable helper. Be careful, son. Knowing what expression God has made him, knowing what expression God has made him to be, will help you become a better helper to the man of your life. God says so clearly and emphatically that if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God that giveth to all men liberally and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him. James chapter 1, verse 5. Ask God to help you know and appreciate your man. Pray to God. Pray that God will give you the wisdom and grace to share your man's dreams so it will always be you that he dreams about. Time to consider. Wisdom is knowing what you brought when you married them, when you married that man. Ooh. Wisdom is knowing what you bought when you married that man and learning to adapt to him as he is while enjoying the full value of your purchase. How many subscribe to that? How many will subscribe to that?
DJ's done, Daddy. DJ's done.
All right. For sure, not a problem, sis. DJ's done? All right, look, let me finish this right quick. Tell DJ I'm coming, all right?
All right.
All right. Tell DJ I'll be there in just a second. Make a new habit. Is it God's will for your husband to adapt to you? Or is it God's will for you to adapt to him? What habits in your life should you change to adapt to your husband's needs? Start today. Get serious with God. The word wisdom appears 223 times in God's word. As you look up and read each time the word wisdom appears, God will do a work in you and give you wisdom as you seek it. The Bible teaches that the sister of wisdom is God's commandments, and the kinswoman to wisdom is understanding. Proverbs chapter 7, verse 4. Add to your diary your favorite wisdom verses. Establish one time each day that you will be reminded to ask God for wisdom. For instance, I have resolved for myself that when I stop at a red light, I will remember to pray for my husband. At every meal, we pray for both safety and wisdom for ourselves and our children. We write a certain hour or occasion that will remind you to silently ask God for wisdom for yourself and for your husband. Here are a few of my favorite wisdom verses. So teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom. Psalms chapter 90, verse 12. To receive the instruction of wisdom, justice, and judgment, and equity. Proverbs chapter 1, verse 3. So that thou incline thine ear unto wisdom and apply thine heart to understanding. Proverbs chapter 2, verse 2. Wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore get wisdom, and with all thy getting, get understanding. Proverbs chapter 4, verse 7. All right. That was chapter 9. I'll be right back. Let me go get my boy up and tolerate quick. I'll be right back. That was chapter. We're going to go ahead and jump in to chapter 10 as soon as I come run right back. Give me 20 seconds. All right, my bad. I'm back. My bad. Sorry for the delay. All right, that was chapter 9. Finding your life in his. How many wives can find their life in their husband? Or how many girlfriends even already believe in that? But how many of the women who want to become wives have that mindset already to find yourself and find your life in your husband's life? Are you prepared to make the changes that need to be made so you can find your life in his? Chapter 10. Reactions define you. Reactions define you. Let me see. What was the line that knowledge equals buying and understanding? It says, wisdom is knowing what you bought when you married that man and learning to adapt to him as he is while enjoying the full value of your purchase. Chapter 10. Reactions define you. A wise woman does not dream of what could have been. She does not see herself as God's gift to men. Therefore, she is joyful and content in her present circumstances. My bad. By the time you're married, you already held certain basic convictions. You know right from wrong. You did what you thought was right, and no one could persuade you differently. But now you find yourself and your convictions challenged by someone who may not share your established standards and worldview. He may be more liberal than you, more permissive, or he may be stricter and more logistic, or more legalistic. Sorry, stricter and more legalistic. The presence of children further complicates the situation. You might desperately do, you might desperately, you want desperately, excuse me, to do what is right for them, but you have submitted yourself under the authority of another. Life is not going the way you had planned, and you can't act or react the way you had wanted to. You find yourself pushed to the limits of your patience, and then you react in unsubmissive and selfish anger. Reactions are not premeditated actions springing from our best motives, carefully thought out, planned, or weighed. They are emotional responses, breaking loose like wild horses when we feel hurt, cheated, used, or misunderstood. They are often retaliatory, condemning, confrontational, adversarial, and eventually vengeful and punishing. Your reactions break you loose from your social inhibitions and manifest who you really are inside and what you really believe at your core level. We lose our careful, preserved front when we are pressed beyond calculated thinking. Then, who we really are is made manifest. You can control your future reactions considerably by changing the way you think before you are pressed into a response. The way you think every day determines the way you feel, and it will determine how you will react in stressful situations. I agree. Researchers have determined that the average person thinks over 40,000 thoughts each day. The heart is filled with thoughts, and it is out of the reservoir of thoughts that the mouth speaks words of praise or bitterness. When the pressure is on and the dam of reservation breaks loose, you can't control what you say because you will speak from the abundance of your heart, from the 40,000 thoughts you have had that day and all the days before. A good man out of the good treasure of his heart bringeth forth that which is good. And an evil man out of the evil treasure of his heart bringeth forth that which is evil. For of the abundance of the heart his mouth speaketh. Luke chapter 6, verses 45. If you, as a wife, are going to change the way you have been speaking, it is not a matter of willpower, it is a matter of thought power. For as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. Proverbs chapter 23, verses 7. You must bring into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 5. For out of the heart proceeded evil thoughts. Matthew chapter 15, verse 19. As Paul says, let this mind be in you, which is also in Christ Jesus. Philippians chapter 2, verse 5. You will be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Romans chapter 12, verse 2. Not by the strength of your will to hold your tongue. God tells you how to think about your role as wife and helpmeet. If you believe him, you will then think differently. If you were in an airport baggage pickup area waiting for my red suitcase and I saw a young man snatch it and run, I would be very upset until I learned that my husband sent him to get it for me. When my thinking changed, my feelings changed. The lady married to the accountant turned dairyman was sitting at home angry because her husband was late. When he finally arrived, he went directly to the barn to take care of his cows. She couldn't hold her tongue. She couldn't help the way she felt because she had spent the entire day, no, the entire week, month, last 3 years, thinking how miserable she was for the circumstances her husband had brought upon her. She felt it was her red suitcase that was stolen. Hey, he has no right, she thought over and over again. This is not what we agreed to when we got married. She repeated this to herself many times a day. He should come in and eat the supper that is already cold from waiting, not go out and milk those cows. She repeated to herself during the last 3 hours when he was obvious that he was late. She was storing up in her heart an abundance of selfish thoughts. Her actions and reactions became enslaved to her misguided thoughts. What could she do to change her thoughts? She could learn something she does not know. Not just from the book's advices, but from God's book, the Bible. She was not created to choose her husband's vocation, nor to choose his or her lifestyle. She was created by God to be her husband's helper. She was not created to choose She was not created to choose her husband's vocation, nor to choose his or her lifestyle. She was created to be by God to be her husband's helper. In her case, that meant becoming a country girl, a dairyman's helper. She doesn't have to milk. She doesn't have to like cows, but she was created to help the man who does like cows. Think how different it would be if, when he was 3 hours late, she thought about how blessed she was to have a good man coming home to her at 7 in the evening with a paycheck and to have love, security, a father for her children, a warm bed all night, and the promise of a bright future with more cows, better milking equipment, and hopefully a rise of milk prices. How thrilling life would be. How exciting and new every day would be. An adventure out in the country, not stagnating like the rest of the old fogies in town. Many a woman is sitting alone at 7 in the evening, afraid that her ex-husband might try to break in again. And she's wondering where she and the kids are going to move to next month when they are evicted from their duplex. How can I help you, sir? She and many others. Well, go to sleep. No, don't go to sleep. Don't go to sleep yet. Don't go to sleep yet. No. She and many others would love to be in this lady's kitchen, waiting peacefully for her grassroots husband to come in late for supper, only to go out to tend to his cows. When he did finally come through the door, his dinner would be warm and the smiles and hugs would be warmer, with promises of an even warmer bed. Ooh, that's something I would like to hear. Ooh, that's definitely something I would like to hear. They ain't talking about that. They ain't talking about that. You are what you think, and God tells you how to think. Think the truth. This is not the power of positive thinking. This is the power of the truth as God defines it. You are created to be your husband's helper, not his conscience, not his vocation director, and certainly not his critic. When you develop an adversarial relationship with your husband, you do so on the premise that you are right and he is wrong. You are also assuming that you have the duty to resist, confront, and challenge him. In thinking he is wrong and you are right, you declare yourself wiser than he, more spiritual, more discerning, more sacrificial, etc. All of this adds up to the obvious conclusion that you have assumed the role of leadership, teacher, and judge. This is sinful and odious, and it displeases God greatly. No woman will ever have peace and joy until her mind is filled with goodwill toward her husband. No woman will ever have peace and joy until her mind is filled with goodwill towards her husband. Ooh, that's a hard one right there, too. And she is committed to becoming a good helpmeet for him. Yeah, let me say it all together. No woman will ever have peace and joy until her mind is filled with goodwill towards her husband, and she is committed to becoming a good helpmeet to him. Is much of your life a reaction to real or perceived wrongs? Are you truly as wise as you think? Take the wisdom test below. Let's take the wisdom test. Wisdom test, number 1. Do you have enough fear of God to not question his word? Do you have enough fear of God to not question his word? Number 2, do you sometimes feel God is punishing you by telling you to obey your husband? Number 3, let me read number 2 again. Do you sometimes feel God is punishing you by telling you to obey your husband? Ooh, I wonder how many feel that way. Number 3, would you give God excuses like, my husband is mean, or I'm a strong personality and he is weak? Number 4, how would you respond if God gave you directions on how to talk, when not to talk, or how to dress, and even wear your hair? Number 5, are you comfortable with dismissing the Bible's role for women by saying we live in a different culture? Ooh, that's a big one. That's a big one for women right there. Are you comfortable with dismissing the Bible's role for women by saying we live in a different culture? When God says to reverence, meaning stand in awe of your husband, do you think that is demanding too much? I would say they say yes. When God says to reverence, meaning stand in awe of your husband, do you think that this is demanding too much? Will you say, if God says it or even suggests it, then that is what I will do? If you can say, not my will, but thine be done, then you can know that your prayer is based on the fear of God. It is in the beginning of wisdom. Ask God to give you the beginning of wisdom by asking him to teach you to fear him. Time to consider. Time to consider. We have learned that our created nature is to be a helpmeet to our husbands. We have learned that a helpmeet is someone who helps her husband in any and all of his life's projects. Let's read that one again. We have learned that a helpmeet is someone who helps her husband in any and all of his life's projects. We have learned that the joy of the Lord is our strength, and that a merry heart is a real asset in becoming a godly helpmeet. A smile keeps our man looking our way. Our desire is to become a jolly playmate to our husband and to be an heir with him of the grace of life. All of us have decided that we do not want to grow old and become crazy old, religious fanatics who think that they are obeying God while disregarding his written word. We have learned that the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom, and we shudder to think that we might have ended up being like some of the old reprobates we know who dishonor their husbands. things. Almost, sir. We have learned that wisdom is a gift that God promises to anyone who asks. Through wisdom, we have discovered that each of our husbands are made in the image of God, either as a command man, a visionary man, a steady man, or some mixture of the three, with one dominant. We know that it is our job as a helpmeet to always be looking for ways to better meet our husband's need and desires. Traits of a good helpmeet. She asks God for wisdom. She learns to understand and appreciate her man for who he is. She learns to be flexible. Getting serious with God. Now that you have thought more about your role as a helpmeet, it is time to go back and add to the list of things you could be doing that will free your husband to be the man God created him to be. That was chapter 10.
Hey, Dad.
Oh, we're gonna see. We're gonna see how long chapter 11 is.
Ow.
We're gonna see how long
Wow,
chapter 11 is.
TJ.
Ooh, chapter 11 is long. I'm gonna have to
Daddy.
read. Yes, sir, I'm done. I'm gonna have to read chapter 11 by
I'll
itself.
put this in there, Daddy. I'll put this in
No, I'm right here on chapter 11. So that was chapter 9 and chapter 10.
there.
Chapter
9 and chapter 10.
Mhm. Chapter 10 was chapter 9 was finding your life in his,
Say chapter 10.
and chapter 10 was reactions define you.
Doctor, please.
Reactions
take me
define
with
you. Your reactions define you.
Doctor, please take me with you.
I like what it says. It says, we have learned that a helpmeet is someone who helps her husband in any and all of his life's projects. Are you comfortable with dismissing the Bible's role for women by saying we live in a different culture? I know a lot of women would fail that one on that test. She was not created to choose her husband's vocation, nor to choose his or her lifestyle. She was created by God to be her husband's helper. We're gonna see, man. I think I might go into chapter 11. I really want to go into chapter 11. Chapter 11 is the nature of man and woman. I think I want to go.
Man and woman, Daddy.
Yes, sir. A man and a woman. The nature.
A nature?
The nature
I got you, Daddy.
of
I got you
man
in your
and
face.
woman.
I got you in your face. I got you.
Mhm. We might read about the nature of man and woman and see if there's anything that we can learn and grow from it.
Got you.
Do you think it's something we can learn and grow from?
I got
The nature of a man and woman?
Yes, I do, Daddy.
You do?
Yes, I do.
All right. We might see. We might read just a little bit. We'll see. We'll see how far we go. Stop. Get out my stuff. DJ, leave it alone, like I told you.
Ow.
Let's see. Let's go into chapter 11.
What's the child weapon?
Man was created to subdue. Woman was created to assist.
Oh.
God made them that way.
Oh, that made them that
God
way.
made them that way.
That made them that way.
God, good. God made him or made them that way.
That's what I do, Daddy.
Yes, he did. He created me. He created you. He created DJ. He created all of us. He created the trees. He created the bugs. He created the dirt. The dirt, the stars, the moon, the sun, the water. He created all that. Yes, sir, all of that. Let's see. God created man with a nature that is aggressive and then commanded him to exercise dominion over the earth. Genesis chapter 1, verse 20. Over there. Move, go sit on the sofa. If you're not going to stand right there and be quiet, go sit over there. He created the male sex with an extra dose of testosterone, which provokes him to want to work hard, conquer everything in his path, and subdue all things. That is why the male sex is at the forefront of military conquest, exploration, architecture, science, inventions, etc. No woman will ever go out and tame the wild horse and make a rope out of its mane and tail, and then go out and find a bear and lasso it to just prove that she could, laughing the whole time. Hey, go sit over there. Stop. What I told you to do. Go ahead, handle your business. What I told you to do. All right, handle your business. Go sit over there and handle your business. Thank you. All right. I should only have to tell you once. If women were the inventors, they would make minivans. Men make four-wheel drive vehicles and they modify them so that they will stand higher and drive faster. They will even put a winch on the front of it so they can traverse places meant only for alligators and mountain goats. Men fly to the moon, climb treacherous mountains, fight wild animals, challenge each other at any sport, and laugh with loud, hilarious delight the whole time. They like to play and watch games where they knock each other down, just to prove who is the strongest and toughest. Everything they do must end with a testosterone-driven climax. And they think we ladies are hard to understand. A woman can do about anything that a man can do, but it is always the men who invent it, and they eventually invent the ladies along. Oh man, I'm reading terrible. And they eventually invite the ladies along just to make it more interesting. Testosterone again, a few ladies will always step out and play the men's game, trying to prove a gender point. Though men don't need a point to prove, they just need to vent. Men are different, we must face it. Thankfully, men and women were created alike. Men and women were not created alike. Men were created with traits that do not want as part of me. But when I married, it was, of course, to one of those strange male creatures with those traits. When we ladies discover traits in men like sensitivity, spirituality, and understanding, we are thrilled because they contrast so starkly with the many coarser and visible traits that so strongly drive his nature. After all, having a nature to subdue all things, he likes best a woman who will give him a token struggle and then surrender at his wit, charm, and strength. He must thoroughly conquer. It is a battle I always enjoy losing. I like to be conquered and consumed by my man. That is my created nature. The woman was deceived. When Adam was created and placed in the garden, Lucifer, the fallen cherub, was jealous of Adam's position as master of the renewed planet. Lucifer, having become the devil, had previously made himself an enemy of God in his program. He did not want God to be successful at replenishing the earth. From the very beginning, it was in the devil's dark heart to lure Adam into disobeying his creator. Satan would make Adam into the same rebel that he himself had been for such a long time. But Satan did not approach Adam. He waited and watched. When God finished with Adam, he gave him the job of naming all the animals. He commanded the first man not to eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And he told him to subdue the earth and have dominion over the animal kingdom. His principal job was to dress and keep the garden in Genesis 2, verse 15. So even before Eve was created, Adam was a full-grown man, firmly rooted in his relationship with God and fully engaged in his life's work. Adam was alone as he attended to his vocation and obeyed the command of his creator. In going about the task of fulfilling his duties, he became aware of the need that he could not define. Even thought he observed it in the male and female behavior of the animals. He was lonely. He had no one with whom to share his achievements and conquests. God, in watching Adam, said, "It is not good that man should be alone. I will make him a helpmeet for him. Genesis chapter 2, verses 18. God put Adam to sleep and took a rib from his side to make of it a woman to be his helper and meet he needs. And to meet his needs. Excuse me. Satan could have tempted this lonely man at any time, for he had no knowledge of good and evil. But Satan waited for the creation of the weaker vessel. For Adam was first formed, then Eve. And Adam was not deceived, but the woman being deceived was in the transgression. Timothy, 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 13 and 14. Satan knew that the man could not be deceived, but the woman could. So when she drew near to the tree, he convinced her that life would be better if she sought the higher state of being, like the gods, gaining spiritual insight into the nature of good and evil. Eve was deceived in 3 ways. Number 1, she followed her flesh in desiring the tree for the food properties. Number 2, she succumbed to its beauty, desiring it for its pleasant appearance. She did not follow logic. She followed her sensibilities. Number 3, she wanted deeper spiritual insights than those provided by God. The source of Eve's failure was her unwillingness to believe God and her husband. She was meant to be Adam's helper, but she helped herself to spiritual knowledge and acted independently, becoming his downfall instead of his helpmeet. Ooh, that's a hard one. That's a hard one. She acted independently, becoming his downfall instead of his helpmeet. Why did Satan avoid Adam and approach Eve with his offer of greater spirituality? Lucifer is a male being, Isaiah 14, chapter 12, verse 20. He understands the natural resistance of the male. He knows males say no just to prove that they are in command. But Lucifer could see that this soft, sweet female was vulnerable. God had made her by nature to be responsive, and she was trusting and naive, being willing to rationalize she could be deceived, having the best of intentions. Wake up. Wake up. Wake up. Wake up. Don't go to sleep. Wake up. Wake up. It ain't time yet. It's not time. Shake it. Shake it. Shake it. Wake up, man. Get up. Wake up. Don't go to sleep. Come on. In my mind, I pictured the man being created heavily armed. His armor is helpful both spiritually and physically. God loaded him down with resistances, giving him a nature that is doubting, skeptical, forceful, and pushy. God knew that in order for man to survive and even prosper, he would need a natural armor that would drive him to keep pushing against the odds while enjoying the challenge. God knew that Satan was a liar and the master of deceit. So he created man to question first and believe later. Man's objectivity and lack of intuitiveness make him appear less spiritual than the sensitive, believing female. As a general rule, man is ruled more by his mind than the female, who is governed more by her sensibilities. Picture God as deliberately creating the woman without his armor, because he intended for her to stand behind her husband's armor. He was to be her covering, her shield, her protector. Satan was able to deceive her when she left Adam's side and confronted the devil's logic alone. She didn't have the armor to ward off his fiery darts of deceit. Hey, get up. Sit up. Don't go to sleep. It's not time to go to sleep. Come here. Do you need some water? Are you okay? Come here. I need you to stay up, all right? Because if you go to sleep now, you're not going to sleep tonight. So I need you to stay up. You got to stay awake. You got to stay awake, all right? We're going to read. Let's read.
Let's read the chapter 2.
We're in chapter 11.
Chapter You love it.
Now you gotta sit up. Don't fall asleep. Don't be trying to fall asleep.
That's where
Don't
we're
be trying to fall asleep on me. Don't get comfortable on me.
Yeah, don't fall asleep yet.
Don't fall asleep yet.
Yeah, don't fall asleep yet.
God designed the woman to be sensitive and vulnerable for the sake of the little ones whom she must nurture. The soul of a mother had to be vulnerable, the outer shell thin. She must be quick to feel, to hurt, to love, to have compassion, to take in the broken, and to believe the best. Vulnerability is a woman's greatest natural asset and the point of her greatest weakness. A woman can become tough and hard, skeptical and cautious in relationships, just like a man. She can become guarded and cynical, but in so doing, she is no longer feminine, no longer attractive to a man, and she will begin to not like herself. Ooh-wee. She can become guarded, cynical, guarding and cynical. But in so doing, she is no longer feminine, no longer attractive to men, and she will even begin to not like herself. I told you, don't be getting comfortable on me, man. Don't be trying to get comfortable on me. Don't be trying to find you a spot, nestle yourself in there softly. Unprotected by the covering of her husband, she will grow miserable fighting her own battles and trying to survive on an equal footing with men. Just like at the faces and mannerisms of the outspoken feminists and lesbians. In their attempt to share their vulnerability and express their independence, feminists begin to exhibit traits and behaviors completely outside of their created feminine nature. They lose their beauty and charm and become very poor excuses of men. Beautiful, deceived dreamers. Women in general give the appearance of being more spiritual than men. They like to dabble in soulish thoughts. There are many, many ways of expressing spirituality, but most of them have nothing to do with the spirit of Jesus Christ. We ladies are more inclined to trust in our feelings and intuition than our men, which makes us more subject to deception, just like Sister Eve. Feelings and intuitions are ever changing. The word of God is objective and dogmatic, unchanging. It is to religion what hard facts are to science. You rarely hear a man say, God told me to do this, or God led me to go down there. The few men I have known who talk that way did not demonstrate that they were on any more led by the Spirit than other Christian men. I know that when God does speak to my husband and leads him in a supernatural way, he will not speak of it in public. He does not feel the need to promote himself in that manner. And furthermore, he believes that if he is truly heard from heaven, God doesn't need his publicity. God will God will vindicate himself. But many Christian women habitually attribute nearly every event to divine guidance. Experience proves that women are prone to claim God is their authority when God has nothing at all to do with their leading. Ooh, man. Experience proves that women are prone to claim God as their authority when God had nothing at all to do with their leading. It is really quite appalling to see this shameful behavior still in action today, especially when God so graciously gave us the example of Miriam, Moses' sister. Her desire to be on an equal footing with Moses has left her name in infamy for our abomination. First Corinthians chapter 10, verse 6 through 10.
Hey, Granddaddy.
No, sir, I'm not. No, sir, I'm not. I'm not done. No, sir, I'm not done. We have some more pages left to go. We might do a part. Might come back with what was it? Hey boy, don't be yawning in my face, man. Don't be yawning. Don't be yawning. Not time to go to sleep. For our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the scriptures might have hope. Romans chapter 15, verses 4. God seems to be gracious to us dimwits, and that is what we are. That is what we are when we lightly use God's name, a form of blasphemy, to give authority to our intuitive decisions. The bottom line is that women enjoy their own self-effusing spirituality. It is a feminine trait that few men share or understand. Men can, however, become totally absorbed in their own personal ambitions and, in the process, neglect their spiritual side altogether. Women often see this carnality in men and assume that women, being more spiritually minded, are closer to God, and a complete false assumption. Okay, knock it down. No, I'm not done. I'm not done. Nearly all spiritualists, thank you. Nearly all spiritualists, past and present, are women. Women are the palm readers, crystal ball gazers, fortune tellers, and tarot card readers. Witches, covens are headed by women. Most mediums, those contacting the dead, are women, as was the witch of Endor, whom King Saul consulted concerning long dead Samuel. When Jesus spoke a parable about the kingdom becoming corrupted with false doctrine, he illustrated it with a woman bringing in the corruption. Matthew chapter 13, verses 33. In the book of Revelations, it is a woman, typically called Jezebel, who deceives the churches, or who deceived the church. We are told that she did it through her teaching. John wrote to the church of Thyatira and warned them against following that woman Jezebel to teach. Warned them against allowing that woman Jezebel to teach. Revelation chapter 2, verse 20. Women are either directly or indirectly responsible for most of the parts and present cults of Christianity. The Bible makes a point of revealing the inherent nature of women when it gives a reason why women should not teach men. And Adam was not deceived, but the woman being deceived was in the transgression. 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 14. That a man is less sensitive than a woman does not make him inferior to her, nor does her being more subject or subject to deception than her husband make her inferior to him. Just different natures. It is in recognizing that difference that wives should fear God and distrust their natural tendencies. Things that are not the same have different capacities and different offices. Things that are not the same, men and women, have different capacities and different offices. And the woman's office is to be the helpmeet to the man, and his office is to conquer and have dominion, to provide and protect. That's his office. Adam knew. God had instructed Adam, and Adam had instructed Eve. Adam clearly understood that Satan's promise of spiritual enlightenment was a diabolical lie against God. The natural armor God had given Adam granted him enough understanding to doubt the devil and resist his lies. But Adam's armor had one small weak spot. He was not ruled by his feelings except where it concerned his woman. Adam's soul was exposed and vulnerable to the woman he loved. He wanted her happy, even if it meant disobeying God or going against his natural understanding of truth. He was willing to set aside reason for his woman. Eve's influence over Adam changed the course of history. We need to be aware of the power we have to seduce our husbands into following us, into disregarding the clear, objective words of God. Adam, the first man, Samson, the strongest man, Solomon, the wisest man, and even David, the man listed as being after God's own heart, were all brought down by the women they loved.
Daddy,
Yes, sir.
can we have the
Wait up. That is almost done. Look, I got it.
Wait up.
Let me see. 1, 2. We got 3 pages.
3 pages.
Yes, sir, we got 3 pages. Yeah, we'll go up in there. Yes, sir. Excuse me. When a man loves a woman and wants to make her happy, he will often acquiesce in spiritual matters because of the affection he holds for her in his heart. Your husband may set aside reason and good judgment if you pressure him and let him feel your displeasure and unhappiness. In a man's heart, the place a woman holds will lead him into great strength or great weakness, depending on the woman and the man. It is there that men rise to great glory with their women, and they are dragged into shame and disgrace by them, or worse yet, are left unused by God. Remember the crazy lady who drove her family to financial ruin because she felt led by God to move and change her husband's business. Her husband knew it would not work, but he could not stand against her constant pleading and her spiritual intensity. He wanted desperately to be the man of God she wanted him to be, but in doing so, he gave up the glory of the man that God expected him to be. Then she badgered him into giving the little that he had left as a tithe, in hopes that it would move God to bless their lack of effort with unearned wealth. What foolish rebellion, all in the name of spirituality. In the end, they lost everything, and she lost her mind. Men are still allowing women to take the spiritual lead, and women are confidently leading just as Eve did. They believe they are doing what is good for the family. It is not an act of carnal lust. It is a religious act driven by rebellion. Women are simply deceived. Let me go, boy. Women are simply deceived. This is why God has so carefully taught us ladies to observe and maintain our roles as helpmeets. It is why we must implicitly trust God's judgment as to our duties, regardless of how we feel. God gave us a careful and stern warning as to what women would become in the last days. The prophetic picture of this woman is now in full array. It is the spiritual Jezebel, who is the exact opposite of a helpmeet. Almost. I'm almost down to 2 pages. Watch back. That is the death knell, or death knell of the most noble institution on earth, the family. As you read the next section about the prophetess Jezebel, learn to hate all that she is so you will not fall victim to her wicked practices of deceit. The following is an abbreviated account of an article first published in its entirety in our No Greater Joy magazine, in March through April 2002. To read the complete version, go to www.nogreaterjoy.org. The Jezebel profile. It says seek. Seek.
Almost there.
Yep.
Almost.
Let's see what the Jezebel profile is talking about. Let me get my bookmark. The Jezebel profile. When the name Jezebel is mentioned, most of us see the painted face of a seductively dressed woman gazing into the eyes of a man who lacks good sense. The Bible portrays Jezebel in a different light. Revelations 2:20 says that Jezebel calleth herself a prophetess. and men received her as a teacher, showing that she was part of structured Christianity, ministering to the saints. Jesus warned the church against the teaching women, the teaching woman Jezebel, excuse me. Any woman who defies the scriptures prohibition against women teachers in the church is following in the grave tradition of Jezebel. 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 Any woman who defies the scripture's prohibition against women teachers in the church is following in the grave tradition of Jezebel. I'm going to let that sink in for a minute. Let that sink into your mind, all you female preachers and pastors. Any woman who defies the scripture's prohibition against women teachers in the church is following in the grave tradition of Jezebel. I went back to 1 Kings to see what the Bible had to say about the historical Jezebel. The first thing I noticed was that she was more spiritual and religiously devoted than her husband. She used her insights to guide him. He was a weak man, so she took the lead to motivate him. The Bible says in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 3, but I would have you know that the head of every man is Christ, and the head of the woman is the man, and the head of Christ is God. 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 3. Regardless of our circumstances, when we women take the spiritual lead, we step out from under our designated rightful head. The second thing I observed was that Ahab was emotionally volatile, unstable. Is your husband prone to retreat? Is he bitter, angry, or depressed? When a woman takes the lead in marriage, her assuming of the masculine role makes a weak man weaker to the point of sending him to bed, as did Jezebel to Ahab. To bed, to bed, to bed, I will push you to bed. Yeah. The third and most significant thing I noticed was that she used the emotional stress to endear herself to him, a strange way of lording over her husband. If you read the story, you will see how Jezebel manipulated and accused an innocent man. I will in a minute. Get down, move, right back. Yeah, a little bit. Right back. If you read the story, you will see how Jezebel manipulated and accused an innocent man, then had him murdered so that Ahab could obtain his vineyards. Ahab, in depression, kept his face to the wall and let her do her dark deeds. Today, if a woman is willing to play the husband's role in directing the family, her husband will lose his natural drive to bear responsibility. Oh, man. Today, if a woman is willing to play her husband's role in directing the family, her husband will lose his natural drive to bear responsibility. He will turn his face to the wall. The fourth thing that jumped out at me was how Ahab was easily manipulated by his wife to suit her purposes. She stirred his passive spirit, provoking him to react in anger. Jezebel used him to set up images to kill God's true prophets. Often, a man becomes involved in the local church, not because God has called him, but because he is trying to please his wife by at least looking spiritual. When a husband steps into a spiritual role at his wife's beckoning or emotional pressure, he is susceptible to her guidance in that role. Jezebel took steps to help promote her spiritual leaders. In the process, She provoked her husband to destroy those in spiritual authority whom she did not like. Have you influenced your husband to think evil of those in authority because you did not like something about them? Jezebel knew that she was not the rightful head. She invoked her husband's name to give her word authority. He to give her word authority. My bad. Have you ever said, "Oh, my husband will not let me do that," when you knew he would not care? It was the way to maintain control and to stop those who would question you. When a woman steps outside her divinely ordained nature and assumes the dominant role, she will soon become emotionally and physically exhausted and dangerous. Ooh wee, dangerous. Dangerous. When a woman steps outside her divinely ordained nature and assumes the dominant role, she will soon become emotionally and physically exhausted and dangerous. Keyword dangerous. Ruth. In contrast, God revealed the ideal woman in positive stories about women who honored him. The story of Ruth is about a young girl who had known tragedy, extreme poverty, and hard menial work. Yet, she maintained a thankful and submissive attitude. Read the book of Ruth and see a beautiful example of bold femininity that caused Boaz to love and admire her. Take note of your humility and the deference she paid to all in authority. Note her willingness to work and her willing obedience to the spiritual teachings of her aged mother in law, Naomi. And lastly, see the wonderful blessing God showered on her in placing her into the lineage of his own begotten son. Man, every time I hear Ruth, I think about all these women who all about they looking for their Boaz. Where is my Boaz? But you ain't even doing and wouldn't do none of the stuff Ruth did to get Boaz. None of that femininity that they just said that Miss Debbie Pearl just said that Ruth showed. They wouldn't show none of that femininity. They wouldn't show none. They wouldn't be out there in the field working for that boy. Working for that man, the field. Esther. Esther is the story of a Jewish girl, not a Jewish, she was a Jew, Israelite, who lost her family and was taken by force to become the wife of an older, divorced, heathen man. She could have asked herself the silly question, did I marry the right man? Or even a sillier question, since he was divorced, is he really even my husband? If she had, there never would have been a book in the Bible describing her courage, honor, and fortitude. She was put by her husband's decree in danger of losing her own life and lives of all her people, the Jews. Yet she rose above her circumstances and her natural fear to honor her husband, even as she made an appeal to save her own life along with the lives of her people. God has laid down only the few simple rules for women to follow because they are consistent with our feminine nature and the nature of men. It was Esther's submission to these principles that won the king's love and appreciation for her as his queen. These two women, Ruth and Esther, showed themselves womanly and lovable in the midst of extreme circumstances. God honored them with his favor and favor from the men in their lives. Proverb, the virtuous woman. Ooh, this one everybody, a lot of women like to go to. They like to call themselves the virtuous one. The Proverbs 31 woman. Are you really that? The virtuous woman. Proverbs 31 defines a virtuous woman. She is not a mosey, voiceless, proud. She is confident, hardworking, creative, and resourceful. Her first virtue is that the heart of her husband is safe with her. That is, he can trust her with his thoughts and feelings, never fearing that she might use the private knowledge she has of him to hurt him in any way. A man will maintain a distance from his wife, never really opening up to her. If he senses that she might give this knowledge out inadvertently or use it against him when they are out of sorts. A man whose heart is not safe with his wife will never tell her that he intends to what he intends to do or how he feels, because on previous occasions she has assumed the role of overseer by taking it upon herself to be his conscience and the manager of the time. She reminds him of what he said he was going to do in a manner that says, I am holding you to it. What is wrong with you? Are you a sloth or something? He finds it more peaceful to keep his own counsel. Wives, never use your special knowledge of your husband as leverage to get your way. Yeah, as I say, God said never do that, but shit. Shit. If this passage in Proverbs had been written for our modern perspective, it would have extolled her for having a quiet time and being a prayer warrior, teacher, or counselor. In all the spiritual profiles of righteous women, including the Proverbs 31, no such concepts are more mentioned. In our culture, we have lost a clear understanding of what constitutes a virtuous woman. We have accepted the modern idea of the spiritual woman circulating in the realm of religious power and have forgotten that God does not see them in this same glorious light. What we think is spiritual, God labels as Jezebel. What we think is spiritual, God labels as Jezebel. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither your ways my ways, said the Lord. Isaiah 55 and 8. A woman working beside her man is a spiritual force for them both. A woman providing good sex and fun company is offering her husband a spiritual benefit. A woman preparing healthy meals and cutting the grass so he can go fishing on Saturday is a spiritual woman because she is placing him above herself. There is no greater love than to put another first. I'm almost done, man. I'm almost done. Yep, look, I got this last page. Mhm. Dominance and control are always masculine characteristics. It is important that for a woman to understand that she must be feminine, devoid of dominance and control, in order for her man to view her as his exact counterpart, and thus willingly respond to her protectively with love and gentleness. A woman who criticizes her husband for watching too much TV, playing too much golf, or indulging in any frivolous activity is expressing dishonor. When the relationship is properly balanced, a wife can make an appeal at the right time and in the right manner, and it need not be a challenge to his authority. We will speak of how to make an appeal in due course, but the certainty, know of a certainty, know of a certainty. You're all right. Not more. But know of a certainty that when a woman continually tries to assert her own will against her husband, throwing it up to him that he is wrong, she is usurping authority over him, lording over him, and dishonoring him. A woman who continues in this behavior blasphemes the word of God and can expect God's sure reward. I say again, when a woman steps outside her nature and assumes the dominant role, she will soon become emotionally and physically exhausted. A man cannot cherish a strong woman who expresses her displeasure of him. You say that he should model Christ's love regardless of how she acts. Is that what you want? Is it what Christ wants? Do you want your husband to be forced to seek supernatural power just to find a way to love you? Do you want to be another of his trials? Yes, sir, I'm almost there. His greatest example of overcoming adversity. The home front should not be a spiritual battlefield. Yes, sir, I'm almost done. I just got one more page. I just got the backside.
Side to the page. What side to the page?
Yes, sir, just got that. You just got that. It should be the place where a man relaxes and can be vulnerable with the woman he cherishes. Men will always want to reclaim those times when love was fun and free with no demands, like the times when she would smile at him with that sweet girlish, "I think you're a wonderful" expression. She was so feminine then, so much as a woman. He wanted to hold her just because he was a bundle of delightful joy. She was a bundle of delightful joy. He would do anything for her. Time to consider. Time to consider. Yes, sir. It's the last page.
Are we done?
Almost. God placed man in the position of head of the family.
Almost done, Daddy.
God placed man in the position of head of the family, not because he is wiser or more capable, but because it is part of God's eternal design. When people think of your family, do they see your husband as the principal player, or do they think of you as the main character? Would they refer to your family as Kathy's family or as John's family? Have you usurped the position of headship? The very first command God gave to a woman was, thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. Genesis chapter 3, verse 16.
Daddy.
The very first command God gave to the woman was, thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. Genesis 3, verse 16. Is your desire towards your husband? Do you live to please him? Do you live to please him? Ooh. Is your desire towards your husband? Do you live to please him? Or do you expect him to live up to your convictions and whims? Do you spend your days in angry frustration over his unwillingness to change to your specifications? If so, you have become a Jezebel. If so, you have become a Jezebel. Can you say Jezebel, DJ?
Jezebel.
There you go, Jezebel. Biblical profile contrast. Jezebel profile. Leave it alone, boy. Prophetess, teacher, one who pities, religious, controller, virtuous woman profile. Helpmeet, silent, encourager, prudent worker, submissive. Ooh-wee. How many are gonna go with that second one? That virtuous woman, helpmeet, silent, encourager, prudent worker, submissive. That was chapter 9, 10, and 11. Yes, sir, I am done. 9, 10, and chapter 11 of the created. All right. Now look, you gave me a hug. Now get down right quick so I can finish. Get down so I can finish. Move. That was chapter 9, chapter 10, and chapter 11 of Created to Be His Helpmeet. Hold on, son. Hold on, son. Hold on. Created to be His helpmeet. What did I tell you? Be quiet. Wait till I'm done. You understand? All right. That was chapters 9, 10, and 11 of Created to Be His helpmeet. I'd like to thank everybody who popped in. That made me read the extra chapters. I hope that it's something that you can learn and grow from in what was read, what you may have heard about the position a wife has as a helpmeet to her husband in everything. Help him in everything. That's what it says. I hope you women examine yourself and see, are you the Jezebel profile? Or are you the virtuous woman profile? Are you Ruth, Esther, or Jezebel? Which one?
Esther or Jezebel? Which one?
Yeah, that's what we need to know. Wow. But till next time, we'll come back next time with chapter 12, which is servitude and service. Servitude or service. We're almost halfway. Yeah. We're almost halfway through the book. We're on page 117, and the book has 334 pages.
4 pages.
So we'll come back. We'll come back next time and read chapter 12. Until next time, man. Let's read with Shilo. Shilo is out. Welcome to all of man. Like, comment, subscribe. Tell your people about it, man. If you got something from it. Let's get a discussion going.
We'll come back next time.
Yes, right. But thank you for subscribing to the page. To all the new people, man. Welcome to Boot Soldier and Shilo Benisra's page. We're gonna continue to move. Internet look like it held up good today for YouTube, man. So all praises for that. We're gonna keep on pushing. So shalom, everybody.
Shalom, everybody.
Till next time, shalom.